It's Wednesday, October 23rd here in Korea, and these are what's making the headlines at this hour. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un orders to get rid of South Korean buildings at Mount Geumgang Resort, calling them shabby and unpleasant looking. We tell you what this implies amid chilly inter-Korean relations. South Korea's health ministry raises warning level on liquid-based e-cigarettes from refrain to stop. It now strongly advises people to stop using vaping products. South Korea-led environmental organization, the Global Green Growth Institute, unveils its own index that measures the performances of each nation's green growth efforts. We take a look at how countries across the globe are faring. Hong Kong formally withdraws the controversial extradition bill that sparked months of citywide protests. NEWSCENTER begins now. Good evening to our viewers in Asia and hello to others watching from around the world. Welcome to Arirang News Center. I'm Han-dan in Seoul. We begin with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's unexpected order. Kim has ordered the removal of all, quote, unpleasant-looking and shabby South Korean facilities at the Mount Geumgang tourist resort, built in efforts to boost inter-Korean exchanges. The South Korean government and political parties were quick to respond to his remarks. Kim Mo-kyun has our top story.
A key symbol of past inter-Korean cooperation, South Korean tours to North Korea's Geumgang Mountain is at risk. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un ordered the removal of South Korean facilities at the tourist resort, criticizing those who had pushed ahead with the tours. According to North Korea's state-run Korean Central News Agency on Wednesday, Kim looked around the facilities at the Mount Geumgang tourist area that South Korea built when the tours first began. He strongly criticized the buildings and ordered the removal of all South Korean facilities there.
Our most respected leader instructed the removal of all the South's unpleasant-looking facilities after consulting with the South Korean side and the construction of new modern facilities built in our own way that go well with the natural scenery of Mountain Geumgang.
Kim also criticized the predecessors who pushed ahead with the inter-Korean project, saying it was wrong to expect benefits by offering the area and depending on others. The North Korean leader also stressed Geumgang Mountain is not an asset that's shared by the two Koreas and does not symbolize inter-Korean relations. Kim's visit to the area also sparked attention as he was accompanied by his wife, Lee Seol-ju. It was Lee's first public appearance in 4 months since she was seen with Kim during Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit to the north in June. Seoul's Unification Ministry has said that it's in the process of figuring out the exact intention behind Kim's remarks over the Geumgang Mountain Resort and is willing to hold future discussions on the matter.
The government will talk with the North if the North asks it to, in terms of protecting South Korean citizens' property and keeping the spirit of inter-Korean agreements.
Unification Minister Kim Yeon-chul added that there's still room for cooperation between the two Koreas and big opportunities could come before the end of the year. Rival political parties were also quick to respond. The ruling and opposition parties both expressed regret over the North Korean leader's remarks, with the ruling Democratic Party claiming that the two Koreas should find ways to foster cooperation through dialogue. The main opposition Liberty Korea Party, together with centrist Bareunmirae Party, strongly criticized the Moon Jae-in administration's inter-Korean policies, calling them one-sided and complacent. The Party for Democracy and Peace and the Justice Party stressed that Pyongyang should stop creating walls that block the path to peace and prosperity on the Korean peninsula. Kim Mo-kyun, Arirang News.
The sudden decision from the North caught many by surprise and is raising questions on how we should read the message from the North, what exactly the North wants and why. Arirang's Unification Ministry correspondent Oh Jung-hee spoke to some experts.
The major announcement from North Korea on Wednesday that it'll demolish South Korean facilities at Mount Geumgang-san tourist resort and replace them with its own buildings got many observers in Seoul thinking it'll be difficult to revive the tours as a symbol of inter-Korean cooperation. They say the North is doing more than just expressing discontent towards the South for delaying the resumption of the joint economic project. It's a declaration that North Korea will take Mount Geumgang-san tours into its own hands and run them by itself.
Kim Jong-un's comments criticize how the North has been dependent on South Korea. It will be difficult to see the Mount Geumgang-san tours as a symbol of cooperation from now on. Even if the tours resume, the North would be the main business owner and South Koreans will only be the visitors.
South Korean tours to the North's Geumgang-san mountain started in 1998 as a joint project. Its main operator has been the South Korean firm Hyundai Asan, which built most of the facilities there. The sudden turnaround, pundits say, comes as North Korea prepares for a prolonged international sanctions regime. Pyongyang doesn't expect much from its nuclear talks with the U.S. and at the same time thinks it cannot depend on Seoul either. Therefore, the regime is eyeing tourism to earn currency.
North Korean economy has been placed under very harsh economic sanctions through United Nations Security Council resolutions. And North Korea is obligated to have all its workers now abroad return home by the end of this year. So this is one of the last-minute attempts to help improve the fiscal situations of the North Korean economy.
While Kim Jong-un ordered the officials to first consult with Seoul before removing the South Korean facilities, experts say the talks won't be friendly. It's highly likely to be the North unilaterally notifying the South about its decision.
If inter-Korean talks about the Mount Geumgang-san tours begin, then the North will be demanding that Seoul quickly remove the facilities it built. The talks won't help in improving or thawing inter-Korean relations.
Observers also note North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's visit to Mount Baekdusan last week. It's where Kim goes every time he has to make a major political decision. And the measure announced on Wednesday provides a clue of what he decided there: to strengthen the regime's self-reliance and break away from its past dependence on Seoul. 우정희, Arirang News.
Hyundai Asan Corporation, the primary company behind inter-Korean tourism, said it was perturbed by the report of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's instruction to remove the South Korean facilities at Mount Geumgang Tourist Resort. In a brief statement, Hyundai Asan said it would respond in a calm manner to developments. It spent around $190 million on building the resort. South Koreans were allowed to visit Mount Geumgang Resort starting in 1998. But the tours have been suspended since 2008 after a South Korean tourist was shot dead by a North Korean soldier. Officials from South Korea and the U.S. are meeting this week in Hawaii for talks on sharing the cost of stationing American troops in South Korea. Before leaving for Hawaii on Tuesday, Seoul's newly appointed top negotiator, Jong-un said he will make sure that Seoul contributes a, quote, reasonable and equitable amount. These are the negotiations for the 11th such deal between the allies, the current one expiring at the end of this year. South Korea was to pay around $890 million in this year's deal, a rise of 8.2%. But President Trump wants Seoul to pay potentially billions of dollars more. South Korea and Russia are holding a joint military committee meeting to discuss setting up a hotline to prevent accidental intrusions into each other's air defense identification zones. During the talks today and tomorrow at Seoul's Joint Chiefs of Staff, the two sides are expected to discuss signing a memorandum of understanding on the hotline. The meeting comes a day after 6 Russian military aircraft entered the Korean air defense zone without prior notice. The South Korean Air Force responded by dispatching 10 fighter jets. President Moon Jae-in and Spanish King Felipe VI held talks in Seoul today where they discussed a range of ways to build future-oriented relations. The two agreed to boost their countries' cooperation in various sectors, from future technology to tourism and construction. Her Park Hee-jun at the Blue House.
South Korea and Spain have agreed to further build their future-oriented partnership in a wide range of areas, one of them being future technology. During a bilateral summit at the Blue House Wednesday, President Moon Jae-in and King of Spain Felipe VI acknowledged the vast potential they share in 5G networks.
자율주행차, 스마트 시티와 같은 5G 핵심 서비스 분야에서 서로 협력한다면 큰 시너지 효과를 낼 수 있을 것입니다.
And on the tourism front, President Moon anticipates Korea's attendance at the International Tourism Fair in Madrid next year to further strengthen such bilateral ties, especially with the two countries celebrating the 70th anniversary of their relations in 2020. According to the Blue House, Korea is the first East Asian country to be invited as a guest to one of the largest tourism exhibitions in the world. President Moon says he hopes to share Korea's attraction with the attendees and bring in more Spanish visitors. Korea and Spain will also continue to expand their joint construction projects in third countries. Korea is evaluated highly in the Middle East and Asia-Pacific market and has successfully secured major contracts in Australia for road construction and countries like Turkey for oil refineries. A Blue House official said there is great amount of potential there, with Spain being one of the top countries in construction. As of September this year, South Korea and Spain worked together on 56 projects in 23 countries under contracts worth $13 billion. Following the bilateral talks, the leaders signed a set of MOUs on tourism and trade. On Thursday, the leaders will attend a bilateral business forum where they will further discuss ways to boost economic ties. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
After attending the Japanese emperor's enthronement ceremony on Tuesday, South Korean Prime Minister Lee Nak-yeon met with young Japanese people and politicians, as well as Korean nationals today. With the schedule coming just a day ahead of his face-to-face with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, Lee has emphasized that Seoul and Tokyo resolve the current issues diplomatically. Our Jong-un reports.
On his second day of a three-day trip in Japan, South Korean Prime Minister Lee Nak-yeon expressed faith in achieving dialogue. Speaking to students at Keio University on Wednesday, Lee said that Seoul and Tokyo have been dealing with different interpretations of the 1965 Korea-Japan agreement since when it was signed. But he said whenever the two countries have clashed over the matter in the past, they have managed to resolve tensions through dialogue. He added that the currently frayed bilateral ties between Seoul and Tokyo can be resolved diplomatically like before. Prime Minister Lee also called for a future-oriented relationship between South Korea and Japan. He said given the two countries' precious history of 1,500 years in bilateral exchanges and cooperation, the present generation is responsible to resolve problems and conflicts between South Korea and Japan through dialogue and transform them into nations that they can take pride in, handing down to future generations. A panel of students also held a Q&A session with the South Korean Prime Minister, where they asked about the feasible ways to sustain civil and cultural exchanges amid the current diplomatic fallout. To those, Lee replied that political leaders should act more wisely. At the end of the session, he handed out his business card to each student for them to send him any additional question. He received a necktie as a gift. In line with today's remarks, Lee has reiterated Seoul's stance on the importance of dialogue. All eyes are now on his scheduled one-on-one with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on Thursday, 11 a.m. local time. Lee Kyung-un, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, South Korea says it'll strengthen its efforts at the WTO to win its dispute with Japan over Tokyo's trade curbs and will thoroughly prepare for the WTO's eventual ruling. In a meeting today, representatives from the government, the presidential office, and the ruling party discussed countermeasures to Japan's trade restrictions on South Korea, and the three sides agreed to call on the international community to support a swift resolution of the issue. They also agreed to continue working to boost South Korea's industrial competitiveness on top of the success some firms have already had in overcoming the trade curbs. South Korea argues that with the trade curbs, Japan violated international trade rules by retaliating against Seoul for a court ruling last year, ordering certain Japanese firms to compensate the Koreans forced to work for Japan during wartime. South Korean and U.S. officials are working to decide whether South Korea should keep its status as a developing country for trade purposes or be recognized as a developed country. It's an important decision as developing countries get special benefits at the World Trade Organization, and the U.S. is about to revoke that status. Our Kim Hae-sung tells us more.
South Korea's Trade Minister Yoo Myung-hee said the government has conveyed its stance that the agriculture industry needs to be taken into account in deciding whether South Korea maintains its developing country status at the WTO. Her comments come after a meeting with U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer and President Trump's top economic advisor Larry Kudlow in Washington on Tuesday local time. The trade minister said the U.S. highlighted how some countries that have already reached certain development levels still get special treatment through their developing nation status and that this hurts reform and development at the WTO. In July, President Trump accused some countries, including South Korea, that are among the world's richest economies, of abusing WTO's developing nation status. He said the U.S. will stop treating such countries as developing nations should the WTO fail to make substantial progress after 90 days, which is October 23rd. WTO privileges for developing economies include longer transition periods for implementing trade agreements, technical assistance, and protection against emergency import restrictions imposed by developed nations. The deprival of such status is expected to hurt South Korea's farmers who are protected by subsidies and tariffs on agricultural goods like rice. Trade Minister Yoo said the government will consider Korea's national interest, its global economic status, the global economic environment, and stakeholders related to the matter and make its decision on whether to keep its WTO developing nation status later this month. Meanwhile, the meeting between government officials and farmers' representatives on Tuesday in Seoul to discuss the issue ended abruptly after the farmers' demand to have the meeting open to the public was not accepted. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
Hong Kong officially withdrew on Wednesday the extradition bill that sparked months-long mass protests across the city.
As a result of the divided public in regards to the bill, there have been conflicts within society. I formally announced the withdrawal of the bill.
As the legislature formally killed the controversial bill, extradition to mainland China will not happen. But it's unlikely to quell the unrest in Hong Kong, as the decision is only one of 5 demands of what has now become a full-blown pro-democracy protests. Apart from withdrawing the bill, the protesters have been calling for the authorities to allow direct election of the nation's leader, an amnesty for those charged with rioting, and resignation of the current leader, Carrie Lam. Amid growing concerns in South Korea about the health risks of e-cigarettes, the health ministry raised a warning level on liquid-based e-cigarettes from refrain to stop. It strongly advised people to stop using vaping products and urged lawmakers to pass tougher bills on controlling their sale. Kim Bo-kyung has this report.
Back in September, the health ministry advised people not to use liquid-type e-cigarettes, but now the ministry is issuing a stronger warning over their use.
Firstly, the ministry strongly urges people to stop using e-cigarettes, especially children, teenagers, pregnant women, and people with respiratory diseases.
The ministry recommended teens to stop using e-cigarettes immediately. It also urged lawmakers to tighten controls on e-cigarettes by passing several pending bills. If the bills are passed, the government would be able to extend the definition of cigarettes to include e-cigarettes. The current definition is restricted to cigarettes made from tobacco leaves. The bill would also force manufacturers and importers to submit information about harmful substances and would allow the government to ban companies from putting flavors in cigarettes to discourage teens from starting vaping. The ministry also seeks to amend the current law to let the government recall cigarettes and ban the sales of the product if it is found to harm people's health. These measures follow a suspected case of lung disease related to vaping, which was reported over a week ago in Korea, as well as a rise in the number of diseases and deaths in the United States that have been blamed on e-cigarettes. According to U.S. Centers for Disease Control, 1,479 lung disease cases associated with the use of e-cigarettes or vaping products have been reported as of October 15th. E-cigarettes are thought to be behind 33 deaths of patients in the U.S., but the cause of the deaths is yet to be confirmed. Thus, the CDC has recommended people not to use e-cigarettes or vaping products in order to avoid the risk. An e-cigarette giant Juul decided to temporarily stop selling certain flavored e-cigarettes online about a week ago, with states such as Massachusetts and Washington also temporarily banning e-cigarette sales. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Private taxi drivers staged a massive rally in Seoul today to protest against a local ride-providing service. Thousands of taxi drivers based in Seoul gathered in front of the National Assembly, calling the mobility platform Tada illegal. They claim that Tada is causing confusion in the market as the platform refuses to follow the negotiations with the Transport Ministry. They said they will urge the government to propose a bill to ban unauthorized rental services from doing business. It is seen that the recent decision by Tada to expand its rental service has prompted the protest from taxi drivers. Korea's Supreme Court has ruled that as long as two married parents agree on the procedure in advance, children born using sperm donors are considered the children of both of them. The court today dismissed an appeal brought by a man asking to confirm that a child born to his wife using a sperm donor is not his. The court said that if he had previously agreed to have a child through artificial insemination using other person's sperm, he cannot change his mind after the child is born. In 2010, South Korea founded an organization to help countries develop their economies in a sustainable way. It's called the Global Green Growth Institute. And today, as part of the Institute's Global Green Growth Week, it launched an index measuring how well countries are doing in that regard. Our Jong-un tells us more.
A growing number of countries aspire to achieve green growth, and measuring their performance is becoming a priority. That's why the Global Green Growth Institute has developed the Green Growth Index to track performance in greening the productive economic sector.
Well, we do believe that in order to manage something, you need to measure it. And then it would help countries measure themselves and their own performance against others, but having a metrics by which they could measure their performance.
The index is based on resource efficiency, the protection of natural capital, green economic opportunities, and social inclusion. And it's the first to benchmark green growth performance against the targets of international agreements such as the UN Sustainable Development Goals. The 115 countries on the index are measured on a scale from 1 to 100, but only 23 scored at a level considered high. The highest ranked country with a score of 75 is Denmark. All of the countries with a high score, 60 points or more, are in Europe. In Asia, even the top countries scored only around 50 points. Less developed countries like Malaysia and the Philippines were at the top, beating South Korea, which ranked 6th. What held back South Korea was its lack of fossil fuels and other energy sources compared to the size of its economy. It also scored low in terms of protecting the environment and a low ratio of forest to its total land area.
Some areas where there's room for improvement is how Korea could scale up its use of renewable energy relative to its overall energy use, as well as use of fresh water relative to its available fresh water, and biodiversity conservation relative to how much of the land is protected.
By 2020, the Global Green Growth Institute plans to pilot its policy simulation tool, which shows possible results of applying certain green growth policies to help governments understand the impact of different investment decisions. Jong-un, Arirang News.
The Korean baseball season is reaching its finale as Tusan Bears and Kium Heroes clashed for the second time today in the Korean series. It's the finals of the South Korea's Baseball League, with Tusan up 1 game in this best-of-7 series. And our Ji-young is now on standby at the Chamsil Baseball Stadium for us. Ji-young, we can feel the cheering fever from all the way here.
Yes, Dawn. Hi, I'm here at the Chamsil Baseball Stadium where we are at about 1 hour into the Korean series game between Tusan Bears and Keio Heroes. The weather is pretty chilly right now, but you can feel the mood heating up at the sold-out stadium as Heroes and Bears fans cheer for their teams. Even 2 hours before the start of the game, a lot of fans wearing their team's uniforms were filling up the 25,000-seat stadium. So let's hear from some of the fans.
I always cheering for Tusan Bears. This year, our team made a miracle in pennant race. We'll make a miracle one more time in this year. Yeah, go Bears!
I stayed up all night, but I came with my friend to support the Keio Heroes. I believe Keio will win Game 2 even though it lost Game 1. Go Keio Heroes!
Well, we can see the crowd really soaking up the excitement. What's the score so far?
At the moment, it is the bottom of the third inning. The Keio Heroes are ahead at 2-0, but there is plenty of time left in the game. For the second straight game, the Keio Heroes opened the scoring in the top of the first inning. The Heroes doubled the lead with another sacrifice fly in the top of the second inning. On Tuesday, the Bears edged out the Heroes 7-6 in Game 1 at Chamsil Stadium, the home of the Bears. The Heroes came back from a 6-1 deficit to level the scores, but Woo Jae-il of the Tusan Bears came through a game-winning hit in the bottom of the ninth inning. Tonight, Tusan's right-hander Lee Young-ah takes the mound, and Kium's left-hander Lee Seung-ho starts the game. Some spectators say offense has been a problem, but both teams, but they will have to shore up the defense. It is the first time in KBO history that the two Seoul teams are competing for the championship title. That's all I have for now. Back to you, Darren.
Our Ji-young in Chamsil for us tonight. Thank you. In football's Champions League, 2 more goals were scored Tuesday night by Tottenham Hotspur striker Son Heung-min. That gave his team a crucial 3 points in their group and put Son tied for the record of most goals scored by a South Korean in European football. Lee Seung-jae reports.
With Tottenham Hotspur taking on Serbian side Red Star Belgrade at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on Tuesday night, South Korean striker Son Heung-min found the back of the net twice, once in the 16th minute and the other just before the first half whistle. The double gave him a second straight UCL match with a goal and his 5th goal in all competitions this season. Making the night even more special, Son's brace gave him his 120th and 121st goal in European matches, tying the record for the most European goals by a South Korean player, a record held for years by legendary Korean footballer Cha Bong-gun. This means 1 more goal, either in a Premier League or Champions League match, will make him the sole record holder. Having an incredible 2018-19 season with the London side, including a runner-up finish in last season's Champions League, Son became the only Asian footballer to be on the list of 30 nominees for this year's Ballon d'Or. Son is only the 3rd South Korean footballer to be nominated for the award after Seo Gi-hyun in 2002 and Park Ji-sung in 2005. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
K-pop sensations BTS are set to put on a show at the Chamsil Olympic Stadium in Seoul this weekend. Starting at 6:30 p.m. Korea time, Saturday's concert under the title Love Yourself, Speak Yourself will be streamed live for fans around the world. The live streaming can be watched through Naver's V Live at the cost of 33,000 won, which is about $28. As for Sunday's concert, fans in South Korea, the U.S., Japan, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, and Thailand will be able to see the live performance by BTS at their local movie theaters. It's a special week this week for Korean cinema, and to celebrate this special week, there are various events being held to recognize the industry's achievements over the past century. And in the first part of our Korean movie series this week, our Kan Young-woo takes a look back at the history of Korean films.
2019 marks the 100th year since the birth of Korean cinema. To get to know more about the history of the Korean film industry, we start with how it all began. On October 27, 1919, Korea's first domestic film, 의리적 구토, meaning Fight for Justice, made its debut at Dansongsa Theater in central Seoul. It was a kino drama in which actors performed against a motion picture backdrop. 춘향전, released in 1935, was Korea's first film with sound. And 이국 Jong-un, which was released 23 years later, was the nation's first color movie. Fast forward 50 years, Korean movies and directors finally began to get recognition on the international stage. 2002 was a memorable year for Korean cinema, as two directors, Im Kwon-taek and Lee Chang-dong, each received a Best Director award, Im for Chiwason at the Cannes Film Festival and Lee for Oasis at the Venice International Film Festival. 2 years later, director Park Chan-wook received the Grand Prix at the Cannes Film Festival for Old Boy, which is the second most prestigious prize of the festival after the Palme d'Or. And finally, director Bong Joon-ho became the first Korean to receive the Palme d'Or at this year's Cannes Film Festival for Parasite. Along with Korean films getting international honors, South Korean movie stars have also won accolades on the world stage. In 1987, Kang Soo-yeon became not only the first Korean, but also the first Asian to receive the Best Actress award at the Venice International Film Festival. Moon So-ri took the Marcello Mastroianni Award at the 2002 Venice International Film Festival, an award given to the Best Emerging Actor or Actress. The Best Actress awards continued, with Jeon Do-yeon winning the honor at the 2007 Cannes Film Festival, and Kim Min-hee taking the trophy at the 2017 Berlin International Film Festival. As for the economic growth of the Korean film industry, South Korea started the new century with what's been dubbed as the era of 10 million views, with 실미도 in 2003 becoming the first Korean film to hit that number, followed shortly after by several other movies. In 2014, Myeongnyang recorded over 17 million ticket sales to become Korea's most watched movie, a title it still holds to this day. From 실미도 to Parasite in 2019, there have been 19 domestic films with over 10 million views. This 1-minute clip shows the development of Korean filmmaking technology, starting from smaller screen in black and white and gradually becoming wider and colorized. Korean cinema has come a long way, reaching over 200 million annual ticket sales in 2018 to become the 5th largest player in the world film industry by box office admissions. Kan Young-woo, Arirang News.
Today was cooler than yesterday, but temperatures are still on the warm side. For the latest weather updates, let's turn to our Michelle Park at the Weather Center. Michelle, good evening.
Dan, the sky wasn't too bright today, but we are not expecting any rain here in the capital. However, rain clouds are forecast to develop in the southern sea, so Jeju and parts of South Coast could see some rain tonight. Now, by tomorrow morning, the rain clouds would have spread to more regions, as you can see here. And from tonight through Friday, the eastern coastal regions can expect the most rain with up to 60 millimeters. Now, meanwhile, Jeju and the rest of the southern regions will see lighter rain of between 5 and 30 millimeters. Now, besides these regions, the nation will be under heavy cloud cover. And now going over to our readings for tomorrow. As usual, the mercury drops into our teens. Now, Seoul, Daejeon, and Gwangju starts the day at 14 degrees Celsius, while Busan begins at 16 and Jeju at 19 degrees. Now, the mercury should rise fast into our day, Seoul topping out to 22, Daegu and Gyeongju hits up to 20 and 18 degrees respectively. Temperatures will return to around seasonal norms by the weekend, now plunging the morning lows down into our single digits. Until then, enjoy the mild weather. Now I'll leave you with weather conditions around the world.
And that wraps up this edition of Arirang News. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for News in Depth coming up next.